All right, y'all. It is time to shine. It is time to shine. I'm your host, Julian Smartrimple, King Jewelz podcast show and vidcast series. We appreciate y'all rocking with us for today's very special episode. If this is your first time joining us, we appreciate y'all rocking with us. But shout out to our wisdom audience and also to any of those that are catching us with the live episode premiere of today's episode. But if this is your first time joining us, I'm the host, Julian Smartrimple, King Jewelz. The RTJ Lifestyle Show was created to spread inspiration to young professionals and millennial entrepreneurs who want to learn wisdom on how to shine brighter in their careers or their business. And so if you are a millennial, shout out to our millennials that are tracking with us, even Gen Z, big up to our Gen Z audience. But even if you're a baby boomer, we still appreciate you rocking with us. We always give shout out to our baby boomers and literally any of our listeners who are now smart jewels. If you are listening to us for the first time, you are now conducting us as one of our smart jewel listeners. So shout out to you all. If you're interested in being on the RTJ show, we only have a few slots for dynamic kings and queens that are looking to share a phenomenal testimony. If you are a business owner or entrepreneur, if you are a content creator or influencer that's trailblazing in your career or your industry, feel free to fill out the link that we're putting in the comment section right now below to be a part of our RTJ VIP family. We only select the best of the best, and so you'll be able to fill out our interest form, and one of our team members will reach back out to you if you are one of the hand selected guests that we have for this season. So shout out to all of our VIP smart jewels who have already been a part of our previous seasons as our special VIP guest. You can listen to our podcast on all podcast streaming platforms. Just search for the Run the Jewelz podcast show, and you can listen to our episodes all the way from our first season now to our current season. And so we definitely put in the work. We put in the tracks to, again, have a phenomenal progress journey and story. And so definitely take a listen to some of our beginnings, and then you can catch up with some of our current episodes that are streaming. Also, you can catch us on Wisdom, on the Wisdom audio app, and also on Twitter Spaces. Shout out to our Wisdom and Twitter Space listeners to get exclusive VIP access to our guests with live Q&A before their episode premieres. And so those are all of my housekeeping for today's episode. Thanks again to any of those that are listening on Wisdom or Twitter, or those who are watching us live. If you have any questions for our very special guests, feel free to put them in the comment section below, or you can come on to the Wisdom or Twitter app to ask our guests any questions that you may have. This is a live Q&A show, and so we want to make sure we address any questions that you may have for our very special VIP guest. And so today's episode, you all, is titled How to Travel and See the World as a Global Educator. If you are someone who is interested in traveling as a career while also being an educator or working in education, you are in the right place for today's episode. If you are someone that is looking even for a career shift or a career change, and you're wanting to, again, travel the world, go from continent to continent, country to country, and especially if you are English or bilingual speaker, you're in the right place to hear from my very special guest, Sebastian Moreno, who is going to be dropping a ton of jewels on today's episode and how he started his journey as a global educator and how he's been able to travel to a number of countries just through the art and the career of education. And so without further ado, I met this king on the Wisdom app, actually, and I told him I definitely wanted to interview him to have him share with us his journey and his story. And so I'm going to get out the way and let my very special guest, Sebastian Moreno, introduce himself to you all. So let's bring him on to the stage. Sebastian, how are you feeling today, King?
Hi, Julian. It's a pleasure. I'm well. Thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing good this morning too, man. We thank you for taking the time to come on to our podcast for today's episode. What we usually do, Sebastian, to start off our episodes, if you can tell us where are you originally from, like your hometown or your home country that you were born in, and then also where are you streaming with us today on your episode, and then why is this an important subject for you to talk to us about?
Sure. Yeah, I'm in the United States. My home state is Connecticut. And so I grew up here, but I traveled overseas first to the country where I was actually born and where my father's family is, Colombia. Later, I traveled to Asia. I'm back in Connecticut and not too far from the area where I grew up, but I live specifically in Bristol. And so it's a small city. I also teach public school here now. And I'm a bilingual teacher at a school district where I teach math, science, and English as a second language.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Definitely shout out to Colombia. I know we've had a few guests on here from Colombia. So big up to any of those that may be watching us or listening from Colombia. And then also even Connecticut. I know I've had a couple friends, Sebastian, that came from Connecticut. But yeah, I definitely still have to travel up there to see what all the hype is about. I hear you get a lot of real estate and a lot of land for your bang for your buck versus staying in New Jersey or New York. So shout out to any of those that are tuning in from Connecticut. But Sebastian, before we start, tell us about your background. I know you said you grew up here in the U.S., but of course your family is from Colombian heritage and descent. Tell us, how were you raised? Were you raised in a household that were educators or that worked white collar or blue collar trade jobs? How did you get raised from your family that got you to lead into a background of education?
Right. So both of my parents have worked as teachers. My mother is a teacher still. And in fact, I studied economics for my bachelor's degree. I looked for work in some of the cities around here, but ended up getting my first teaching job at a private school. After that, I went overseas. But yeah, I guess you could say it's kind of a career that I saw as a path because of my family. I didn't anticipate becoming a teacher. And specifically when I was an undergraduate in university, I didn't anticipate traveling overseas as young as I ended up doing so. I had at one time planned on doing study abroad. It didn't happen. But yeah, I finished my bachelor's degree. And that first degree allowed me to begin teaching and also allowed me to begin teaching overseas. So, for any young person, having a bachelor's degree is kind of the first step to making a career out of teaching.
Absolutely. So you gotta get that BA as the first step in the direction if you want to be in any form of education or teaching. Definitely shout out to even your mom and dad. You said, Sebastian, are both educators or just mom?
My father has taught as a teacher of language and art teacher, but he had his career in sales. So okay. Yeah, he's a fine arts painter and did teach drawing and painting as well.
Okay, so definitely an artisan and an educator, but we always give big ups to the parents that are educators. My mom, she came from a technology background and then converted into education. So she's one of the ones that even got me into working in education and after school youth development. And so always give a big up to the parents who are educators out there, because it definitely is a hard and arduous job from then until now. And so we always celebrate the educators on the RTJ show. But Wisdom audience, if you're listening, if you have any questions for Sebastian, feel free to come on to the stage at any point of today's session to ask any questions. We are kicking off our live Q&A portion of today's episode. And shout out to any of our Twitter Space listeners that are tuning in. But Sebastian, let's start from like your college education. Did you go to school for education? Did you start off with a new major or a new career field that you wanted to minor or major in and then pivot into education? So like, what was your story when you first went to college? Did you go for education or did you pivot?
I took the path of least resistance, and coming from high school, I had a couple AP credits in math and econ. So that's how I got into the economics department. And that major was only 10 courses, and I finished it quite easily. I took more classes overall, courses in the music department. I didn't double major because if I had double majored, then I wouldn't have been able to apply all of the performance music courses to my bachelor's degree. So I finished in 3.5 years. And besides majoring in economics, I got my master's in teaching English from the New School in New York City. So kind of to fill in the gap between the time I graduated and the time I started my master's, I went to Colombia and I was teaching there briefly. Really wasn't making ends meet. Teaching in Latin America, incomes are very low for teachers. So plus there's, there are people who study English who are from those countries who also teach. So the market isn't as competitive for foreign teachers of English in Latin America or Central America or the Caribbean. And, besides having taken the path of least resistance, I got some of my very good ideas to continue in this career path from my friends. So I had a friend from England, and she encouraged me to get a teaching certificate. And I went to London. I was there taking a part-time teaching certificate course, and I had a wonderful stay. I was there for about 3 months. And so studying part-time was about 12 hours a week. And being in London allowed me to see lots of museums. The museums are free, and I loved it. So that was really a really special time. One of my classmates in that program, and I should say there are many options for getting a teaching certificate past the bachelor's degree. The next step to teaching overseas would be to get a TESOL certificate, teaching English to speakers of other languages. And there are two that are kind of neck and neck for prestige. There's the Trinity TESOL and Cambridge CELTA, and that's Certificate of English Language Teaching to Adults. So I got the Cambridge CELTA. That is under Cambridge University, but it is offered at language institutes pretty much all around the world. Not so much in the United States because it is a British credential, but it is widely regarded as kind of the entry-level certificate for generally Europe and Asia. People from Australia will also get this credential, or New Zealand, for instance. Past the CELTA is the Delta. It's a diploma instead of certificate. Many schools, even universities, would consider it like a master's, but really it's much shorter, less money, takes some less time perhaps than a master's degree. But from England, a friend of mine was going to teach in South Korea. So that was my next step. And I went and I taught in South Korea in Daegu for 1 year. And at the end of the year was back in the United States and attended a TESOL conference in New Orleans. So International TESOL Association is a group for professional development for teachers around the world of English, and they have a conference every year. So I attended in New Orleans after teaching a year in South Korea, and I found out about the New School program, the MA in TESOL, and that same summer I started in New York City at the New School, and I did several courses in the summer, and then I went back to South Korea in the fall to continue teaching in South Korea and finish the master's degree. So in South Korea in my second year, I finished my master's degree. And at the end of that time, I had more options. I had the option to stay and continue at the same school or change to a business school or like teaching business English, or go, for instance, to a university and teach at a university. It happened that I returned to the United States after doing a little bit of travel. From South Korea, I was able to travel to Japan 2 or 3 times, traveled to Thailand, Cambodia, and at the end of the stay there, I did a 1-month temple stay in a temple in South Korea. That was really a nice experience. And then I traveled to the Philippines. And after a vacation to the Philippines, well, then I went back to the United States and began looking for work in the US. And there are types of programs that are called intensive English programs, IEPs, at universities, where students are admitted to the school pending completion of a pre-college English program. So I was working at one briefly, didn't stay. I had a friend from my master's program who was teaching in Vietnam. So I went to Vietnam, and leaving the United States for Vietnam, I stayed there for 5 years. And I mean, this is where the story gets more interesting. In South Korea, schools will bring teachers from overseas, paying for the flight and, subsidizing accommodation. But going to another country like Vietnam, you as a professional have to kind of pay your way. So you find out where you want to be. And I went to Ho Chi Minh City and got started with a great daytime teaching position. Give you a little background, there are many types of schools. So it was my first time teaching at a public school in Vietnam, and I taught middle school age students, and it was a push-in program. So it was nice because it was daytime. Many other schools are evenings and weekends. They're language academies. And so, typically if you're going to South Korea, like I did, you would teach evening classes and weekend classes. Also in Vietnam, there are many schools that are that type of schedule where it's a language institute. You teach evenings and weekends. So, it's difficult. And for a young person, it's okay. If you have a family, that kind of schedule might be unacceptable. But I actually ended up teaching daytime when I arrived to Vietnam, doing push-in at a public school. I supplemented the work with other classes. In some moments, I had 2 jobs at the same time, a full-time and a part-time. In Vietnam, I met my wife. We married. We applied for her tourist visa. It was denied. We had a child, our son, and we applied for her immigrant visa. And then we went to the United States together as a family in 2019. And my son was 1 year old. So kind of like my story where I was born in Colombia. My mother's from the United States, and my parents came to the US together with me when I was 1. And actually, I'm an only child. My son's an only child as well. And so we're in the United States, and I teach public school. I also teach online to students in Panama through English language programs, which is a public affairs project of the United States Department of State. The United States Department of State has this group kind of fellowships. Some of these public affairs programs include, for instance, Fulbright. They include this English language programs. Of course, the Peace Corps is under this group. And so there are overseas teaching fellowships as a fellow or as a specialist. And then there's also what's called virtual educator. And so I began that during the pandemic in 2020, teaching to students in Panama. And actually, I continue doing that today. So it is a second job that I have. And my students in Panama are studying for language exams like TOEFL, also for entrance exams like SAT and GRE. And I also coach them on writing the personal statement. And so some of those students they get the dream scholarship to study abroad. And that's been really a great experience working with them as well.
Yeah, you're dropping a ton of jewels right there, King. Definitely for those that are just tuning in, or if you just are coming on the Wisdom app, I'm here with my very special guest, Sebastian Moreno, who is dropping a ton of wisdom on how to travel and see the world as a global educator. If you have any questions throughout today's session, feel free to come onto the stage and ask any questions you have for Sebastian to make sure that you are able to be well educated in how you can potentially become a global educator while also traveling the world. And really quick, before we go into our sponsor for today's episode, Sebastian, like, let people know, I know I'm familiar with it just from being able to travel and even do a little bit of teaching, not as extensive teaching as yourself, but literally I'm familiar with the difference between a TESOL and a TEFL. But tell people, like, is there a particular advantage between getting a TEFL versus a TESOL certificate? And then even what do both of those certificates like stand for those who aren't in education?
Right. So you might see online programs advertised that are TESOL certificates or TEFL certificates. S is for second language, F is for foreign language. If you are from the United States teaching in another country like South Korea, you are teaching English as a foreign language. If you are in the United States teaching to immigrants, let's say, who are learning English, you are teaching English as a second language. However, the online courses are, there are many, and they're probably going to give you some of the same content no matter what course you choose. And if you take a certain number of hours and complete that course, then the employers who receive your application are going to look at you more seriously than if you didn't have that certificate. So it will open doors. Now, they're not all the same. And I think there is some benefit to getting, like I said, I got the Cambridge CELTA. I think the Cambridge CELTA is great because it has the diploma path, so you can advance one step beyond. If you're from the United States, you could, go from your bachelor's degree to teaching in public school. And that's a path that, you can still transition to teaching overseas. Having a public school teaching credential from the United States can also improve your qualifications for teaching overseas. Teachers from England, for instance, they get a public school teaching license unique to that system. And so that course is available overseas as well. So some teachers from the United States might also just, instead of getting a teaching certificate for the United States, they get a public school teaching certificate for England, but it still qualifies them in the eyes of employers overseas, specifically international schools. So the best, job opportunities are going to be the international schools and universities. You'll qualify for teaching work at a university if you have a master's degree. You can qualify for teaching work overseas in international schools if you have a public school teaching certification. If you are a content teacher, it might even be more valuable than a teacher of English as a second language. So for instance, let's say you're majoring in history, you get your public school teaching license in history. You, instead of going to work in a public school, or maybe you try it and you decide you want to go overseas, you're going to be able to get your foot in the door at international schools in some very nice places. There are many countries that are kind of overlooked. It's so easy to get a teaching job in South Korea. As I mentioned, there are many. China, many people go to China. But there are other international school systems in Southeast Asia that are going to provide great opportunities to teachers with public school teaching licenses, like Malaysia and Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore. Those are beautiful countries that are modern and safe, and I highly recommend looking at opportunities there as well.
Absolutely. Hold that thought real quick, Sebastian. We have someone that I think wants to add to the dialogue or ask a question off of wisdom. Let me bring in Jason. We have Jason Kinty, I think is the right way to pronounce your name, Jason. Let's get you on to conversate with myself and Sebastian. Jason, are you there?
Hey, TGITD, thank God it's this decade. Yes, I'm very excited that you have this as a topic, and I also would be interested to being on your show. So I sent you a DM, but I'll take a look later at the application. I actually went to school to educate the world online. So first I studied business, and then I studied adult education. And I also was in marketing at Microsoft when I studied business, Microsoft Canada, 98, 99, as a marketing associate. And then I went back to school after I graduated 2015. So I'm old. I retired last year. Yeah. And then I invested in my program. And my program is for gifted kids. Okay. So it was so hard that nobody got in. We launched. We launched last year.
It's all good.
Nobody qualified, but it's okay. I'm not changing my program, but but I did meet somebody on this app, and I might be working with them. I'm not sure, but I am going to the Founders Institute in October. I got accepted at the Founders Institute. That's globally the corporation for changing it's trained the most founders. I think it's number one. Okay. But my question is, if you're an educator traveling the world, and maybe there was a little portion that I missed, but what do you do? What are your options for educating your kids? Because this is the problem that I'm going to solve. We're going to be, like, in the next few years, I already have the name and everything. Freedom Academy. Okay. It's going to be built by entrepreneurs, built by successful entrepreneurs for successful entrepreneurs. Because if you travel the world, and so last year I retired, I spent the winter in Antigua. And then after 6 months, I was tempted to get some work with the Ministry of Education, but I was all on my own. And then I realized the Ministry of Education wasn't going to work, wasn't going to pay me. They're so behind on things, and a lot of people still catching up from the pandemic. And even before that, they were behind. Absolutely. So stress on the system because they just don't have enough funding. So they weren't going to pay me. In fact, there's a Canadian billionaire down there, and he probably paying them because they need him economic advisors. So so I just came back to Canada. So I'm in Canada, and I can't work in Canada with a ministry because my family's too up in there, and we're not like the Trump family. So I got you. Let me let. Yeah, the question is about that. Like, what are the options for educating your kids? Okay. Number two, what is his view on the fact that the education system doesn't educate entrepreneurs?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
It doesn't. It teaches you financial. Everybody I meet, they're not educated to be a corporate leader. I run 4 companies, and it's taken me so long because now I have to go to investment. But the education system doesn't teach us that.
That's so true. So Sebastian, I know Jason just got cut off for the live Q&A, but basically, were you able to hear what he was asking? Can you answer? Like, let me just repeat it for our guests that are listening. He was asking, like, what are some of, I guess, the plans that you can take going overseas to already have a full-fledged plan as an educator to educate the kids over there. And then I guess for entrepreneurs, like, what are some tips or some jewels that you can share for those people who are entrepreneurs that also want to go into education, like yourself and even Jason?
Right. So teaching can be a second career. It can be a retirement job for people. I think that's something that there are many older people teaching overseas, and they like it. I mean, they might have some money in the bank, and they might be managing their portfolio and paying their bills just with their teaching work. And then they have their portfolio that they're managing nightly or on the weekend, and they maintain their standard of living in a different way. So you have to find kind of the place you want to be. As far as teaching opportunities go, there are some schools that you definitely want to stay away from, that maybe they're not paying. You have to do some research before you sign up with a school. There are many different types of opportunities and types of teaching work. How do you teach kids? Well, yeah, there are many different age groups. You could say that you like working with younger children, middle school age, high school age, or you like working with adults. I mean, the options are there. So it kind of depends as a professional what your preference is and what what you find out or what you figure out is going to be your niche, so to speak. But as far as like working with kids, how do you teach them? Well, if you're an English teacher, you're teaching them language, they're going to get exposure. You're going to be working with materials that the school provides you. So, I mean, you develop your relationship with your students, you learn their names, you learn how to manage the classroom. And those are kind of the steps to becoming a teacher, right? Overseas, I think children have a different attitude toward education than in the United States. If you've worked in the United States as an educator, maybe you have had some stars and you've had a lot of students who don't show interest. Overseas, in general, parents motivate their children. And if they're paying for their private language institute, you know, for those classes, if the parents are paying for it, the students are going there with the intent to learn. And if they're older, they're going to be even more motivated because they have a goal, a professional goal. So my second year in Korea, I was teaching at an institute called Wall Street English. So it's an Italian company. There are different branches around the world. It's kind of like, I guess, a franchise, but it's for adults. So again, you know, you could be working with young professionals or college students. And so teaching at that institute, Wall Street English, I got to meet really amazing people. There were professionals, including doctors. There were people who were mid-career or maybe transitioning or maybe university students. And there were really bright students. They were adults. So that was really fun. And I've kept in touch with some of those students. He came to the United States for university. He's still here. And I got to see him a couple times this year. So we've kept in touch since I met him in 2012. So more than 10 years ago. You make friends as you work overseas. Your professional connections will also probably help you to find your path and have suggestions for you. So kind of, working with kids, young children, that's a specific category of student, and you're going to be teaching much simpler things than if you're working with middle school and maybe like teaching math or science, right? So there are many routes, and you'll probably find that students overseas are quite different in their approach to school and their aptitude than students in the United States in general as a population.
Yeah, that's a great point that Sebastian was able to answer your question, Jason. And we appreciate you, Jason, for asking any questions that you had for Sebastian. We're definitely in our live Q&A portion of the interview. We're going to give Sebastian a quick commercial break so he can catch his breath for a second while we give honor to our VIP sponsor for today. And so each and every episode, we highlight a VIP sponsor for our episodes for entrepreneurs or business owners, or even for affiliates that we partner with. And so let's take a look and see who our VIP sponsor is for today. Let's take a look, you all, and see who our VIP sponsor is for today's episode, you all. So shout out again to our VIP sponsor for today. Comes from our affiliate, StreamYard. StreamYard is who we use for all of our streaming and even for our clients' streaming needs. If you're someone that has a podcast show, if you're someone that has content that you are pushing out on YouTube or any of the other platforms, definitely you need to get in tune with StreamYard today, you all. You can receive $10 off actually by clicking the link that we have in the comment section below. By joining the StreamYard family. It's very stable. You can stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook. They don't have the IP open for Instagram yet, but it is coming soon. But definitely find out how you can be a part of the StreamYard family by clicking the link below to get $10 off with any of the discounted pricing packages that you sign up for today. And we even have our clients work with this platform. And so it is very professional and very business oriented. So shout out to StreamYard as our VIP sponsor for today. But back to Sebastian, we wanted to definitely pay homage to our affiliate for today. Sebastian, I know the $1 million question always that I hear people speaking about when it comes to teaching abroad is, do you recommend, especially as being an educator, that people go through any of the agencies, the hiring agencies that can basically, like how we have in the States, plug you or connect you to the schools or to the private schools or the language training centers, or do you recommend that people go directly and apply to the positions through the websites at the schools, the training centers, or the private institutions or international schools?
Yeah, great question. So it's really hard to know much about a school until you talk to somebody who works there. If you are working with a recruiter, you might or might not have that opportunity. Even a school might have its own private recruiting kind of company, but it's not really its own. It's not really a separate business. It's just the school has a name for the recruiter, and that's just one-on-one with the school. So you're not really working with a recruiter. You're just applying to the school. It's more difficult to get some of the more competitive jobs, like a university position might be difficult to land from overseas, depending on your credentials. It's a bit of a gamble. Some people, unfortunately, they end up at a school that they don't like. The sort of the corporate culture or the schedule is not what they expected. But there are many hurdles. Another hurdle would be having your paperwork completed, all your ducks in a row. You have to probably have a work visa. You might arrive to some countries on a tourist visa, but then you need to, once you start working, you need a work visa. Sometimes it's one thing, that's just the visa, and it's a work visa. Sometimes it's a work visa and work permit, and it's two things, but it can depend on the country. So doing that kind of investigation and research into what are the legal requirements, and the school, talking to somebody who works there would be a great way to try to understand what those requirements are and how easy it is to get started. On the other hand, if you've got some savings and you just want to travel and see a country, and then maybe you're there and you decide that you don't have anywhere else that you need to go, you found your place, you probably can try to land a teaching job. Again, depends on the country. And so your background, if you're from the United States, you're probably going to have an easier time traveling. But in Asia, which it's great, I had a wonderful experience. There are many expats from other countries as well teaching English, from the UK or from Australia or New Zealand, South Africa as well. So there are people from everywhere. So it's a big pool of teachers. But if, on the other hand, if you have a business, right? Maybe you have an idea. You want to open a restaurant in another country. I mean, there are ways to figure out how you can do that as well. You could partner with a local. I mean, there are many types of opportunities. And let's say you don't want to teach, but you want to work overseas. Well, if you're still in your undergraduate, you might do some kind of coursework that's going to allow you to work in supply chain. And so you could work for a multinational corporation in supply chain, and you'll have an opportunity to work overseas.
Yeah, you're dropping a ton of jewels right there, King, because a lot of people, they always ask myself and others. I've taught, I forgot to mention too, Sebastian, in Seoul. I was in Songdong-gu, in the district of Songdong-gu. Like right after I was getting to my senior year of college, we did like a teach abroad program where we actually got paid in the Korean won and didn't receive class credit like a lot of the teaching programs. In Kennesaw State University, where I got my undergraduate degree from here in Georgia, they have a separate program that works with, of course, the study abroad, but we actually were paid. We had access to get the cards for transportation on the trains and on the buses, and we stayed with a homestay family, which was going to lead me to like the next question, which some people, of course, are always fearful of, or even they stress out a lot about the lodging situation. And really, like, what is the teaching work-life balance? Like, how many hours would somebody expect to work for their teaching position versus lodging? How are they able to find lodging if the schools don't provide the apartments for you? Like, what are thoughts that you can tell people that may be a little bit reserved or a little bit agitated at how can I support myself? Where should I live? And also, what is the work-life balance for a typical teacher overseas?
Sure. First off, you might expect to work a contracted number of hours. It might be 30 hours in South Korea, and it might be 30 contact hours. And so then that's quite a lot. A different school might say you have 25 contact hours, but you have to be present for 40 hours. So you have a full-time schedule. In other countries in Latin America, very different. I worked in Colombia, and it was 48 hours was the full-time schedule. And it was a split shift on 4 days. And I think I worked a 10-hour shift on a different day. So, it's just different in different countries. If you have to work a 40-hour week, it might be like a 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. schedule. That would be 8 hours, 6 hours, maybe 6 days a week. I don't know. It could be a different type of schedule. You can figure it out depending on where it's going to be. But it's common to teach a minimum of 20 hours, 20 contact hours. And then imagine you have a certain amount of preparation to do besides. Well, it might be 1 extra hour a day or 2 extra hours a day. And so your work week could be between 30 and 45 hours, just to give you an idea. And, it might be that you have a weekday off and you work on the weekends. You might have 1 day off a week. You might have 2 days off, but they're split. So it might be a Monday and a Wednesday. But again, there are different types of schools. If you work at an international school, it's probably Monday to Friday, and it's probably a regular, like 7:30 to 3:30 type schedule. So there are lots of different types of schools and possible schedules. But if if you're going overseas working at an international school, you probably have a better package, probably includes some housing subsidy. In general, a school will at least help you find housing if they don't arrange it. It can be difficult to make ends meet if you don't have much savings. And, if you get into trouble in some way, you might end up using that savings in a way that you'd rather not. I think in general, the work-life balance is good for a young person. Working evenings was never really an issue for me. When I was younger, I much preferred the daytime shift, but it just depends on who you are, right? And then about accommodation, you probably, if you are not provided housing or accommodation by the school, you need a couple $1,000s to be able to afford a deposit on an apartment. And once you do that, of course, then you're tied into a year lease, And so in those situations, okay, that means you're going to be there for a year. You're going to be teaching. If you break the lease, you're going to lose your deposit on your accommodation. So again, there's so many variables. Yes, housing and accommodation might be tricky, but you probably can find a good deal. And, in many countries, public transit is well developed, so you don't need private transportation. And then, the other piece is we talk about the contract. Okay, the documents, the accommodation. Some schools might provide health insurance, they might not. Depending on your health, you might need to make sure you have some kind of coverage. You might have health insurance through a credit card that you have, for instance, an international kind of emergency medical coverage. But in general, healthcare is more affordable overseas, just from the get-go. And then, talking about accommodation, healthcare, contract, legal status, and then the other piece is diet. So, when you're looking at what kind of environment you want, consider your diet. Are you a meat eater? Are you vegan or vegetarian? And how is it going to be for you living overseas in terms of food? If you love to explore international cuisine, you're probably going to do fine just about anywhere. But if you have some dietary restrictions, you might consider that as well.
Yeah, Sebastian's dropping those jewels for those who may think you can't be vegetarian or vegan overseas. You're sadly mistaken, especially just like he said, if you go to Asia, it's to do vegetarian. And even in a lot of Latin American countries that I've traveled to, and I know friends that teach over there, you can be vegetarian and vegan overseas if you are not a meat eater. Don't let people fool you otherwise. But Sebastian, before we let you go, since you're dropping a ton of jewels, King, tell us where are some of the places you've been able to travel? I know you said you met your wife overseas on your teaching journey and escapades, and how much free time would an average teacher get with the holidays that are in the country that you work in? And even like you were just mentioning, the work-life balance, is there time to really take a vacation or time to really travel to the neighboring countries? Tell us about where you've traveled and how that works into the teacher's schedule.
Right. That's a great question as well, because the academic year has different starting points in different countries. So typically in Asia, there is a time at Lunar New Year where it's a period of 1 or 2 weeks. That's a vacation period. And so if those are your public holidays and the school says you get 12 paid holidays, it might be just those paid holidays during the Lunar New Year, plus maybe a couple extra days that you can schedule. You might not get much more time off than a week or two in any calendar year. So the hiring, cycle begins at different times for different countries. So as you look at what countries you're interested in, find out when the hiring cycle occurs, because that's your chance to get more interviews, more offers, and have a decision at the end of the day, at the end of the process. I traveled from South Korea to Japan, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam. From Vietnam, I traveled again to Thailand and Cambodia several times, to Malaysia and Singapore. I've studied, as I mentioned, in England, traveled a little bit in Europe, and from Colombia, I traveled in the country, but not around Latin America. I have visited Hawaii. I have had an interview in Kuwait. So I've seen some different countries here and there, but as a teacher living overseas, you'll be able to maximize your travel experience within the country that you are. But again, it is easy to travel because many countries are very close to each other. So yeah, I think that's the real highlight. It's once you take the plunge, once you go, you're going to find there are many more opportunities than you were aware of. So that's the really exciting thing. And probably there are many countries that you never considered traveling to that you will enjoy visiting.
Yeah, so just like Sebastian is telling you, you can get your passport stamps for those that are looking. Hopefully, we don't have too many passport bros that may be listening or tuning in. But definitely, if you're trying to get your passport stamped, you have the luxury of doing that as a global educator, especially the time off allotted to, especially in knowing how close the countries are, like Sebastian said. So, Sebastian, we've reached the final segment of our interview today. King, I know you've been a great guest for us to interview, but we always allow our guests to leave a final jewel or a final piece of wisdom with our audience. We know we talked about your background, that you came from being raised in a household of educators. We talked about how you even defined your path to go into teaching abroad, and even went to London to get the certifications, and even now are back in the States still doing your thing in the education industry. Like, what's a final jewel that you would leave for someone?
So, okay. Be happy to share some final advice. I think teaching in the United States is a great experience as well. If you're a public school teacher, the package and retirement options are great. If you're overseas as a younger person, you have this flexibility, but it might be hard to realize any savings, especially if you're traveling. So you're probably gonna, at some point, want to start saving for retirement. If you're single, maybe you can do that as a teacher overseas. But with family come financial responsibilities. So at some point, that's probably going to be a consideration. I think that working in the US as an educator can be a great experience as well. And I'd be happy to receive any questions through social media as well.
Absolutely. And just before we say a quick blessing and prayer over you before we let you go, what's some ways that people can solicit your service? Business owner.
SebAnswers.com, and also Seb@SebAnswers.com is the email, and Instagram @SebAnswers.
Absolutely. So y'all see on the screen of ways that you can stay in contact with Sebastian on IG at SEB Answers. That's his handle on IG, SEB Answers. And you can stay in contact with his services at sebanswers.com. We appreciate you for being on here today, Sebastian. We definitely learned a lot. I even got to learn information that I didn't know about teaching abroad. So we appreciate you, King, for taking the time out to share your jewels of wisdom with us. We're going to say a quick blessing over you and let you enjoy the rest of your day, if that's okay.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Father, yeah, I just want to thank you for Sebastian. I thank you for his wisdom, his knowledge, and even his ability to just be well-cultured is a big, but people do not get the chance to experience going to different continents, going to different time zones, or even to learn about different cultures. But we thank you for using him as a guide, as an educator, and even as someone who can help people through his business to travel and to relocate abroad. I pray that you will bless his business, bless his family, and even his wife for all that you've allowed him to sow. We pray that he will be able to reap 80, 90, and 100-fold increase in new clients, new opportunities, and also in new partnerships. I love you. I praise you. I glorify you, and thank you for this time of fellowship and this interview that was a success. Yeshua HaMashiach, I pray. We appreciate you, Sebastian, for coming on today, King. I know we'll be in touch, and you enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Julian. Have a good one. Bye.
All right, Sebastian, peace. All right, y'all. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to sow a seed with us. You can see pinned in the comment section how you can sow a seed in good soil. Thanks to all of our VIP sponsors for this season. You can Cash App a donation if you feel led to, because we do believe in sowing into soil that you were able to reap the rewards from. Sebastian dropped a ton of jewels for us today, and so you can Cash App at Smart SMART JEWELZ, or you monthly Patreon, or to the merchandise that we have for the RTJ show. All the names you see at the bottom of the screen have been those that have sown for this season, and so sowers and supporters for this season of RTJ. Just some quick highlights for today, some jewels for thought. You heard it first from someone who is a global educator like Sebastian. You were able to get firsthand information on how to do it. He even instructs people and consults people on the step-by-step process, because everyone's situation may be different. You may be someone that has a family. You may be someone that is single, divorcee. You may be married. So everyone's situation can be unique to travel overseas as an expat. And so just like he said, you have to trust experts, not just looking at YouTube videos or YouTube University, but talk to people that have been there, done that, and others that are well-informed like Sebastian and familiar, and also the country's laws and even the culture over there before you go, so that you can be well-informed, so you don't get homesick and want to return back before you're even able to enjoy the fruit of your labor to get there. And so just some jewels for thought. We do have Smart Media Essentials for those that are wanting to receive podcast coaching, content creation coaching. We even have a content creator summit that is happening this August in Cozumel, Mexico, for content creators, influencers, and entrepreneurs. And so you can go to SmartTravelJewelz, JEWELZ, SmartTravelJewelz.com to take a look at some of our content creator tours. We're in August, Honduras for a wellness retreat. And even we're going to be going to Africa in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania later on this year. And then eventually we'll make our way to Japan and Korea, where Sebastian has taught at, and even where I've been able to have the privilege to teach in Seoul, South Korea. And so if you are interested in traveling with us abroad with our team of content creators, definitely tap in and track with us throughout the rest of this season, you all, because we are taking our mission and our business global. Support us with getting some of our new merch. We have a new collection that we dropped, Create, Heal, Prosper, Shine, and Pray. And so you can check out our Create, Pray, and Shine collection that we just dropped for the summer by clicking the link in our comment section, or just going on to our website at www.SmartJewelzEnterprises.com, and with our Heal, all of our subscribers that have been supporting us throughout the last few seasons with our merchandise. We could not have made the RTJ show podcast a success without you. And finally, you can catch us on any podcast streaming platform that you stream your favorite podcast or your favorite music or entertainer or artist by just going to the Run the Jewelz podcast. Search for us on any of the streaming platforms to see our episodes and listen from season 1 all the way now to our current season. You'll just see my face with the RTJ podcast cover art on it for now you all 20 right before the pandemic hit, and so we built up a whole library of episodes to educate, empower, and also elevate all of our talents and our gifts to be used on a global platform, not just local, but we want to teach people how to go global with their talents and their gifts. And so we appreciate, again, y'all rocking with us today. Shout out to Sebastian Moreno. You can definitely tap in with him again by going to his website to see his services, which I'm putting on the screen again at sebanswers.com, and follow him at sebanswers. That's his handle on IG. Stay in contact with Sebastian. Those are all of my final jewels for today, you all. Shine bright like the bright diamond jewel that you've been created to be, because someone that is watching you needs to see and sense the light that is within you. And so never be afraid to share that light with others, and never be afraid, again, to travel the world, because the world is much bigger than where you live, your current time zone, or your zip code. And you got to be able to step out of your comfort zone and eliminate any of your fears in order to experience all that this beautiful earth and world has been created to be. And so I'll see y'all next episode. Stay blessed, stay hydrated. Until the next time we meet again, peace.